Good morning, everyone. This is Greg Aden for another episode of Servant Leadership Podcast. And this morning I have the pleasure of being with Michelle Santaferraro. I say good morning because it's early here in Denver, but it's not so early where she is in Italy. Good morning to you, or good afternoon, Michelle. And how does this day look for you, or how has it been before we jump in?
It's been going well today. I'm in the afternoon and we're about 8 hours ahead of where you are. And we are in full swing because I live in Italy in Tuscany, full swing in tourism. So after that June 15th date, it's kind of like we're now into high season.
Mm,
Started getting hot and making sure things are watered here. We live on a farm, got an olive oil production that most
beautiful.
of that is just depending on the year. Last year didn't go well. Year before went amazing.
So,
So that's fun to do.
briefly for the audience, some of them will know you as a Denverite, so to speak, and you decided to go to Italy because
Ah, that's a great question. So it has what that whole move and even the talk of moving came out of actually we I've been married to my husband now. We just celebrated 40 years, but at
wow,
the point when our youngest was in a senior in high school, so empty nest, we had a very serious I would say we had great disdain for each other. We started to move away from one another, not necessarily taking separate vacations, but
sure.
during that time, we almost divorced.
Hmm.
So there's more details around that story, but and anyone, and I realize too, especially in relationships, any one person could say, you know what, this is actually, we're done. And
Yeah.
so, but I wanted to fight for it.
Hmm.
Found some marriage mentors, and the marriage mentor, the husband was actually in business was in the circle, his circle of influence, and out of Castle Rock, Rich Case. So reached out to him, and he said, I'll meet with you, but John has to come and my wife is coming too. And we walked with that couple for 3 years as they shared a lot of principles and tools that in within 3 years, our marriage was restored. And then we had a sense we needed to give those things away. So 7 years ago, a couple that we knew from Denver moved to Italy. They've been in Italy now 20 years, invited us 7 years ago to
Hmm.
say, hey, do you want to do those marriage retreats here in Italy? We did one, and I think that would almost be the marker of where things started to shift to consider um, moving in that direction for both of us. My husband's had a longer tie to Italy. He just got his Italian citizenship, so he's got roots as well as his heart has been here longer than mine was even aware of the opportunity. So, but we formally moved here 2 years ago. And so it's still a new adventure, still learning the language, the culture, that is
Wow.
unending. So,
Well, just for our audience, the first time I'm hearing of this, and I love that you are open and vulnerable enough to say, hey, it's not easy, especially when the kids are growing up, and now it's just us. But
yeah.
40 years, congratulations,
Oh, thank you.
and shout out to Rich Case.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rich, for helping what I believe are two wonderful, wonderful human beings. And I met you, Michelle, when I was starting Aiden Leadership, probably 11 years ago ish. You came in and I met you through CTLF or something like that. And you
Yeah.
came in and helped me get organized. And a lot of people listening to this, why would you want to have someone come in and help you get organized? Let's just start right there because 28 years
Mm,
you've had a company
mm,
called Orgonomics,
mhm.
and you do exactly what. And let's just give yourself a chance to brag about why you decided to get into organization and how has that changed many lives. I'm assuming.
Oh, thank you. I love how you teed it up for me in that beautiful way. So, it first off, it grew out of I wanted to do something. Again, I love organizing in and of itself. It grew out of it was a time in which my youngest was then going to school. I've been trained to actually work with youth, but to really do something formally like a high school counselor, I needed to go get a master's degree.
Mm,
So when the youngest went to kindergarten and I got my first job, it was basically as a teller at a bank. And within 2 weeks, they offered to hire me as a trainer 40 hours a week, hour and a half commute from in Silicon Valley up to Oakland, and our lives were going to change.
Yeah.
And my husband said, "Okay, let's just talk about this.
Mm.
What is it you want to do?" I said, "I want to dump drawers and organize." And so at that time, 28 years ago, there was something called the Yellow Pages,
Yeah.
and there were 9 organizers listed in the San Francisco Yellow Pages. And so I looked at my husband and I said, "What do I do now?" And he said, "Call them all up. Call them all up and ask who's willing to give you 30 minutes of an informational interview." And from there, found that there was already this national association. For 6 months after going to my first meeting, I met a business organizer and a residential organizer. So I learned and followed them through all their clients and through Stanford and, all the Silicon Valley cities, right? And this was, in a very hot spot too to be for productivity as well as
Sure.
organizing. So I was exposed to both. And of course, when you're young in your career, you say yes to everything. So then I learned, I didn't want to write retention guidelines for um, a small city that I did, or I just said yes to so many things. And then that became to where I now, I'm very clear. I do end up doing more productivity in the office. I still love a great messy garage
Yeah.
because it's just like I can get my hands in there and you see such physical difference in such a short time. But what I've also seen over the years of doing both residential and office organizing or productivity is that I've seen a pattern. And I've seen that when people come to try to organize their chaos, they actually do it tapping into their learning style.
Absolutely.
So people organize chaos by their learning style, meaning if they're high, like tactile, hands on, they're going to find solutions that fit that kind of hands on, tactile. If it's to do list, they want the sensation of writing because it's not real unless it's written down.
Right.
If they are high visual, they're going to want, even if it's a digital tool, they want the color. They want because color tells a story to them.
Yeah.
Or auditory, if you're high auditory, when you want to get organized, let's tap into maybe there's, music playlists that we can do that help transition you or that help you be heads down, or a lot of different tools now where you can use your voice or voice dictation because many auditory that are high auditory. Now, of course, Greg, we use all of our modalities, but um, tapping into that through the years has been, I think, the critical pivot and almost the tipping point of where people go, "Oh my goodness, it's natural, it's within me,
Yeah.
I can do this," and it starts that momentum where we just, in a sense, pull out the organizer that's naturally in them. And that seems to shift everything to where people think, "Oh, I can't do this." You can do this.
You can do
So we
this.
build
Yeah.
on that success. Yeah.
First of all, I want to say for anyone that wasn't born in the 60s, 70s, 80s, or possibly even the early 90s, the yellow pages are the yellow pages within a big phone book where you
Yeah.
would literally look up companies to try and
Mhm.
get a hold of them way before there was this thing called the internet and certainly cell phones and everything else that we now we
Yeah.
now have as crutches, frankly.
Mm.
Yes, I am all those. I am my playlist is divided into working out, thinking, and just really having something on in the background when I'm being creative. Amen, amen to you. And I still have your colored files that you made for me. I'm very color organized as well. And it's funny you mentioned something that a wise man told me a long time ago. If it's not written, it's not. And I don't
Mm,
think
mm,
this was way before there was internet. Yeah, shout
mm.
out to Jim Ainsworth because we would talk about a lot of things. And I was a junior leader at the time, working for a brilliant man who was creating his own company with Stephen A. Batman. Yes, the last name was Batman.
Oh,
Um, and um,
another a nickname.
yeah, it's Stephen Anthony Batman. Company was called uh, First Global out of Dallas. But anyway, because we would talk about a lot of things, but unless I had sent something to him following our conversation, hey, Jim, this is what we talked about. Here are the two options I recommend. And, if you're going to ask me to do one, it would be A. And
Mm.
85%, 90% of the time, he would say, yep, let's go with your idea. But if I didn't
Ah,
give him two ideas, he'd never had anything
mm.
else to compare it to. So anyway, a lot of people in our
Ah,
lives and have shaped our lives to yesterday are still in my world today. One of the main reasons I wanted to interview Michelle, was you had written an article for a company that I'm near and dear with in TerraWorks, and navigating change with intention. I want you to tell us about it a little bit as well. And it was about leaning into who you really are. And
yeah.
first of all, I'd like for you to take a couple minutes and share why in the world did you want to hook your wagon up to TerraWorks? What attracted you to that? And how has that experience been for you?
Ah,
Big questions.
wow. Okay. And stop me, or if for some reason you had one where I missed one. But um it's a big article, but the relationship with the TerraWorks goes back. I've been with them now 5 years, and we had a conversation because someone through CTLF, I think in your circle, I forget the gentleman, said you've got to meet Annie.
Yeah.
So Annie and I had probably a conversation 6.5 years ago, and she's just a woman of wisdom. And at that time, we were dialoguing because I still wanted to find something on the side where it could be maybe other folks' material that I could be a trainer. I wanted to keep sharpening that skill I had about delivering,
Yeah.
being a trainer. So we just had an initial conversation. When it became on our radar that we might move to Italy, Annie and I were at such a place in our talks where she said, we are saturated. We don't need more trainers in the States. Um, so I'm just wanting to let you know when our confirmation to go to Italy was set. So we've been talking about this even
Yeah.
5 years ago, 6 years ago. I said, Annie, thank you for the time, but we're making a move to Italy. So I just want to thank you for the opportunity. She almost emailed back within hours and said, "You're going where?"
Mm.
So it was beautiful that, in a sense, maybe an opportunity for them to keep expanding what they're doing internationally, because many companies that they work with are also have an international footprint. So they did need someone that was
Yeah.
located over here in Italy, and I think the work that I had access to their work years ago through a company I also worked with, based out of Denver, and took one of their courses, and so that was my first introduction, probably I would say 11 or 12 years back. And that course was beautiful. I think it was the Take Back Your Life
Yeah.
course that I got exposure to. But it's just the work that they did was just beautiful. It was beautifully done. I'm seeing the change, and I experienced the change myself. So I was attracted to much of what I saw them producing, as well as the results that I was seeing in people's life. And just again, most of their work, it's like raising that human potential. It was um, people giving people the opportunity to really lead poised and present into the future.
Yep.
So, and
Best yet.
as I've been with them for 5 years, it's like their courses, they do that.
Well, Best Year Yet's been around for ages. Shout out to the late Jenny and the still current Tim Ditzler, who put that on the map. And Take Back Your Life was a part of that. And then TerraWorks was something that came out of the Best Year Yet group, who bought Effective Edge out of Austin. And then they said, let's rebrand these both. You might have been introduced to Annie McGee Stinson by Doug McGee and or somebody else within CTLF as well. Shout out to Doug McGee, one of my best friends and brother. I climbed Aconcagua, but previously I went to Fort Lewis College with his brother Stephen McGee. So I've been surrounded by McGee's for a lot of years, and a lot of what I do, frankly, is because of Stephen was my coach, and I said I had a big job, and I said, I want to do something different.
Mm,
I want to start my career over, and money, accolades, and awards, blah, blah, blah. And this is, as being a servant leadership coach, has changed
mm,
my life and has made a lot of my relationships more rich. But back to your article. Tell us about the article about navigating change with intention, really leaning into who you are and living your life as fullest. What part of your heart wrote this for us?
So, because we've been here now 2 years, and it's maybe some people would think, oh, you live in Europe. I mean, how hard could that be? It is a new culture. So, living in
Sure.
Italy is a new culture. So, this article has come out of now being here 2 years, seeing that last year, in some ways, I was sitting on the sidelines. So, my husband has Italian roots, some of why we can be here. And what I mentioned earlier, he got citizenship. He's also, God's given him a great gift of language. So, last year, a lot of times I sat on the sideline. I would let him jump in. And what I found was I'm missing out or I'm not part of the conversation. I just started to think it was just one of those things where it became this brick wall.
Yeah.
And I thought, no, this year was different. I'm going to like speak to connect. In fact, that's my mantra for this year is I speak to connect. So this article was out of I'm tired of standing on the sideline looking at other people having the conversation. So now when the delivery truck comes, let's say for Amazon, I want to jump out there and start the conversation. Or with our neighbors, anyone I walk out in our neighborhood, I haven't met one person yet that speaks English.
Hmm.
So it's the conversation, whether you're putting the trash down at the end of the driveway, you're going to get your bread. And it also was one of those things the article talks about again, just this being wanting to be fully awake. So for
Yeah.
me, wanting to be fully present. And one thing I also found in being here now, there's this, there can be, and I'm choosing, and may I choose more every day to stay curious about the culture, not to be judging, not to stand back and go, well, I don't understand that. Therefore,
Yeah.
and then you can just make up your story, as Brene Brown says. And
Yep.
so I wanted to like stay curious. In fact, even in Italian, when you ask the question, what does this mean? You ask che significa, what's the significance? So it's beautiful because it's an actual what question. It invites an answer that's just not yes and no. It invites if you want to listen more behind it. So I am choosing, like I said, to step into the conversation. I speak to connect. And also, part of what I wrote was also being gentle, staying gentle with myself. Many times in this culture, I would think, just like in America, if you go and you desire to open a bank account, you can almost go in the same day within a couple hours if you have the appointment, you get a bank account. Not so in Italy. Or if I go to the post office and I think, oh, I'm going to mail a letter, it may not happen the first time you try.
Hmm.
So because of that, just because I may not understand everything they're saying to me, they at one time they asked me, do you want to have somebody sign for this? And I didn't know that conversation, so I didn't know what they were asking me. But it
Wow.
but I'm determined to keep learning. So I stop and I pause and can you write that down for me? So that I can keep learning what I don't know. But that's what this is grown out of this being present, holding back the story I want to jump in and start telling, but it's not true.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily what's really happening. There's so much going on behind that.
Beautiful. It's you mentioned too. Well, you mentioned Brene Brown by name, and everyone that works with me knows that if I could be a combination of two people, it would be Brene Brown and my biggest guy is Simon Sinek.
Uh,
And what's the significance? And to me, that's the word why. Why are we doing this? And if my dad was still alive, he would say, "Oh my God, Greg, you ask why more than anybody I've ever met." And I was curious, and I had no idea what the skill of curiosity was going to mean to me and my life. And I ask my clients, I impart the why wouldn't you want to know why? And if you don't
mm,
know why, how are the other people going to explain what it is they're doing? Not the what
mm,
and the how, but the why. Because the purpose, or in your word, and I want you to say that word again, the significance of what we're doing is maybe not as meaningful to anyone else, but what is our why? And you are living in a country, and it's all about what's the significance. And Those that follow me as well would also say one of my favorite things to tell people is please stay curious, not
Mm,
as a child, but as a human being who truly
yeah.
cares about where the other human being is coming from. I even
Yeah.
has have this funny phrase I say because everyone's familiar with the guy that says, "Stay thirsty, my friends." And it's a beer commercial, and I ask my friends all the time, "Stay curious,"
Mm,
because that's you get there's a thirst for life when you're leaning into someone else trying to find out, but it has to be authentically curious, in my humble opinion.
mhm.
So, what is that
Yeah.
word that means stay? What's the significance? How do you say that?
Que significa?
Que significa. Sounds like a beer almost.
It's like, what's you're asking, what's the significance? Yeah.
Yeah,
What's the
beautiful.
significance of this? And
I
it's
love
like,
yeah. It and why? Why not, right? And you said something else I really want to go back to is you want to be fully present and you want to speak to connect. And
mhm,
just let that sit in,
mm,
ladies and gentlemen, as you're and people listening. It's not just talking at someone.
mm,
You're actually speaking with a purpose to connect with another human being. And what
yeah,
if, Michelle, what if we did this more intentional?
mm,
And what if we did this? And again, is another beautiful article about from Terra Works just came out around. You're not reviewing to tell someone what they're doing. You're having a review with someone that you hired, you say you like, admire, or love, and the
mhm,
reviews can be at any moment.
yeah,
It's just it's funny, we make things so difficult, but everything we want to do really comes right out of our heart, right out of
mm,
our mouth into beautiful communication. And here you are navigating a country
mm,
that they don't want to be judged. They want to be understood. I mean,
yeah, yeah.
wow. It's like almost like a mic drop moment. And you're
It's humbling. It's
it
humbling, I'll
is.
tell you that.
Well, and your vulnerability, in who you are and who you've always been. I mean, again, 11 years ago, you popped into my life for some reason, and I remember reading this article, and I said immediately, I want to get her on my show,
Mm,
and so glad I reached out and thank you for your vulnerability of wanting to be on the show and tell us anything you'd like to and as we kind of close up. But what I love this question, so I'll just ask you. If you were speaking to a room of 22-year-old men and women, what would you tell them to how to prepare for the next 5, 6, 7 years as they're getting ready to graduate with a degree, or maybe no college at all? They're just getting ready to jump into the wild blue yonder. What would you tell them?
I I would encourage them, again, it's at a place in stage in their life where they might feel invincible. Anything's possible, and they've learned and come so far already, but I would encourage them to to just say, "You know what? I don't know." If you don't know, just say, "I don't know, but I'm willing to learn." And that ability to be willing to learn will open up more conversations, will open up. I remember even as when I was young, one of the things I struggled with, and even my friends knew it, is I exaggerated. And you could say, "Well, I lied." Yeah, I wanted things to sound better than they were. I exaggerated. And there's a saying that says, if you remember the truth, you only have one story to tell.
Amen.
And learning that and looking back now, I would say, just if you don't know, just say so. But then give people opportunity to say, but I'm willing to learn. Can you teach me what that's about? I mean, now our world is getting complex. um, Globalization. I mean, there's just so many now. We don't know the beginning to the end, right? So we can't say we know, even predict what could happen in the future. So because of that, I think our stance, staying so teachable
Yeah.
and ready to take in new information or a view that you had not even thought of. Um, yeah, I would say, I don't
Yeah,
know, but I'm willing to learn.
absolutely. And I want to make sure that everyone heard what you said. Don't try and be invincible.
Hmm,
Hey, at 20, trust me, ladies and gentlemen, you don't know half. maybe even a fifth of what you're going to know in the next 10 years, much less the rest of your life. So stay vulnerable, stay what's the humble,
Yeah.
and look at the other person and say, I hear you, but I'm not sure exactly what you're trying to say. But to your
Mhm.
point, Michelle, what you said is, I don't know. Will you
Yeah.
teach me? Now,
Yeah.
you said a word too that basically defines Annie McGee Stinson, wisdom.
Mm, mm,
She's going to share everything she can possibly share with anyone who's willing to listen. But as soon as you
mhm,
start, if as soon as you show up as somebody who knows it all, she's not going to tune you out, but she's gonna lower the volume. So if
mhm.
you want wisdom, and I ask the listeners to, when you're talking to your kids, make sure they understand what wisdom is versus being invincible and braggadocious, may I even say cocky. I'm raising a 13-year-old right now, and this conversation is one we struggle with a lot. He knows everything. Just ask him. And if he
Mhm.
doesn't notice, he'll pick up the little box we call a phone and tell me where he got this. And I'm
Yeah.
saying to myself, what are you learning though?
Mm,
So open
mm,
yourself up, be vulnerable. Thank you, Brene Brown.
mm.
And just let people see inside you. And you know what? Hey, I don't know everything. Are you willing to teach me? And
Yeah.
that will build trust with the person that you're communicating with. I mean, we could talk about that topic forever because I believe parenting and leadership, I've said this on almost every show, it's connected at the hip.
It is so connected. And I
Yeah.
wanna jump on something you said about, opening up. And I thinking about if I'm speaking to these 22-year-olds, um, I loved sports and I love sports still to this day. And I remember watching people, and I actually did snowboard back when snowboards were still the sandpaper with the string, so you weren't strapped in, but you could do it on the on powder.
Hmm.
So when the bindings came to be, there was some time between when I turned 16 to when they got bindings, and I found myself at 23 years old saying, I can do this. I know I can snowboard. And I remember getting out there and just trying to power it just with the lower part of my body, just trying to move that snowboard. And I kept going right into the trees, right into the trees. And later, what I learned was, well, first off, the whole body's involved in
Yeah.
learning to snowboard. But one of the critical things that altered it, and I actually did get to learn, is that where you open your shoulders up, you head in that direction. Now, there is a shift of weight that happens
Sure.
underneath you, but as you open your shoulders up, you will go that direction. And sometimes a snowboard instructor will say, open the door, shut the door, trying to get you to physically experience that. But I would find just even that metaphor of opening your shoulders up to where you want to go. I mean, it's like you're available. You're like, I'm going to go that direction. I'm going to go get curious about what's over there.
Yeah.
And you actually, in a sense, you might not even realize it, but you are now in more control with what you're standing on underneath you. So just think about
Beautiful.
that metaphor, especially when it comes
Well,
to life.
also like when you put your shoulders to where it is you want to go, you're also opening your heart up to, and you're putting your heart where you want to go. And we could go
Yeah.
on and on and on about this, but I just want to say, from a humble man here in Denver, Colorado, to a beautiful human being in Italy, thank you, Michelle. I really enjoyed getting to re-know you. Hugs to you and your husband, and
Thank you.
and thanks for sharing that. After so many years, it still is a beautiful opportunity to work
Hmm.
on who you want to be with. And
Yes.
you guys are testament to doing the work. And
Mm.
something I tell my kids all the time, or one kid now, you got to do the work first. Do the
Yeah.
work first, then we can play. There's always going to be time to
Mm.
play, but let's make sure we do the important work first. But again,
Mm.
Michelle Santaferraro, thank you for being with me today. Go out and have a beautiful evening. And just for those that you were kind of recapping, speak to connect. Be fully
Mm.
aware. Be fully present. Stay curious. Be present, and then ask yourself why. Why are you doing what you're doing? And if you're not sure, get some feedback from other people, but continue to ask people the question why. And
Mm.
and Michelle, you brought in a beautiful question of what's the significance? And you're not
Yeah.
challenging, you're not judging, you're leaning in and you're
Yeah.
saying, "Hey, help me understand why this is important or why my letter won't go out for 3 days." You're not judging
Yeah.
someone. And and I think they will smile at you and humbly give you the answer. And then you can go
Yeah.
out and then to your 22-year-old self, I don't know. Just be
Mm.
open and let people know that you're not
Mm.
invincible. You're humble.
Yeah.
You don't know everything, but you're willing to learn. And just beautiful, beautiful advice. Thank you
Mm.
again for being with us. And again, this is Greg Aden with Aden Leadership. Shout out to Intera Works, one of the best performance-based companies, productivity-based companies that I know. And a little secret, they're going to head out into the wide blue yonder of leadership development too. So stay tuned for more of what great things are coming from Intero. So go out, be kind to someone, be humble, stay curious, my friends. Bye
Mm.
bye.